March 31, 2026. A single file appeared online. 59.8 megabytes. 512,000 lines of code. It wasn't supposed to exist on the internet. Within hours, the tool that developers trusted to fix their code was being weaponized to delete it. Credentials were stolen, databases were wiped, and one of the most valuable AI companies on Earth had just handed its enemies a blueprint. The tool was called Claude Code. The company was Anthropic. And the story of how we got here is one of the most complicated, consequential, and frankly terrifying business stories of the decade. In 2025, the AI industry made a promise. It wasn't just about chatbots anymore. It was about agents, AI systems that didn't just answer questions, but took action. They could write code, run terminals, manage files, and operate autonomously without a human in the loop. Anthropic, valued at $380 billion, their secret internal model achieving 93.9% autonomy in software engineering. An open-source rebellion called OpenClaw, growing to 250,000 GitHub stars in 4 months. This is the story of the AI agent revolution, the power it delivered, the disasters it caused, and the underground ecosystem that rose up when the labs closed their doors. To understand where we are, you have to start where this began. In 2021, Dario Amodei left OpenAI. He took 11 colleagues with him. Most of them were OpenAI's top safety researchers. They had one shared belief: the most powerful AI lab in the world wasn't being careful enough. They founded Anthropic. Their pitch was simple: build powerful AI, but do it safely. For the first 2 years, Anthropic was the company the industry respected but didn't fear. Their models were thoughtful, their safety papers were excellent, their revenue was modest. Then, 2024 happened. Claude 3 Sonnet dropped in March. Developers noticed something different. It wasn't just smarter, it was more useful. It could reason through complex problems, hold context across long documents, and outperform competitors on coding benchmarks. By the end of 2024, enterprise contracts started stacking. Amazon poured in billions. Google followed. Anthropic locked in access to 3.5 gigawatts of Google TPU compute. That's roughly equivalent to the power consumption of a small city, dedicated entirely to running their models. By April 2026, Anthropic had reached an annualized revenue run rate of $3 billion. Their valuation had climbed to $380 billion, more than Ford, GM, and Stellantis combined. But revenue told only half the story. Inside the company, something else was happening, something the public didn't know about. A project so powerful that Anthropic's own safety teams had flagged it for emergency containment protocols. They called it Mythos.
Mythos was never a product. It was a research artifact, a frontier model built to test the absolute limits of what AI could do. While public models like Claude were optimized to be helpful and safe, Mythos was designed to pursue long-term goals autonomously. No hand-holding, no safety rails, just raw capability. The benchmark that shook Anthropic's internal teams was SWE Bench Verified. It's a software engineering test where the model is handed a real codebase with real bugs and has to find them, write a fix, and pass existing tests, all without human help. The best public models were hitting around 50%. Mythos scored 93.9%. That number means this: 19 out of 20 times, the model could operate entirely alone in a production codebase and fix real problems correctly, without a single line of human guidance.
For context, that resolution rate exceeds the performance of most junior software engineers on their best days, with the full codebase in front of them. Anthropic's researchers celebrated. Then they got worried. The same capability that made Mythos extraordinary also made it dangerous. The model could predict human psychological responses. It could frame information to achieve specific outcomes. And it could identify exploitable vulnerabilities in legacy technology systems with alarming efficiency. Those last two words, legacy systems, triggered something. Major banks run on COBOL code written in the 1970s. Power grids run on infrastructure that predates the internet. The concern wasn't abstract. A model that could autonomously identify weaknesses in complex, outdated systems had obvious implications beyond software development. Emergency meetings followed. U.S. Treasury officials, banking CEOs. The subject: what happens when an AI reaches this capability threshold and the wrong people get access to it? Anthropic's answer was Project Glasswing, an internal containment framework built around something called AI Safety Level 3. The higher the level, the more rigorous the restrictions. Mythos was locked behind it. No external deployment, no API access, no licensing deals. Mythos would stay inside the lab. The public would never see it. What the public would see instead was something Anthropic believed it could control. On May 22, 2025, Anthropic released Claude Code to the public. It wasn't a chatbot, it was something fundamentally different, a terminal agent that lived directly on a developer's workstation. Previous AI tools required you to copy and paste your code into a browser window. Claude Code operated in the terminal itself. It could read files, write code, run commands, execute scripts, auto-iterate through problems until they were solved. Developers called it a superpower. The early testimonials were extraordinary. A solo developer at a startup deployed a full authentication system in 2 hours, a job that previously took a week. A startup reduced its engineering backlog by 60% in a single month. Enterprise teams started cutting contractor budgets. The numbers reflected it fast. Within months, Claude Code had hit an annualized run rate of $2.5 billion, a product that barely existed 6 months earlier. But Claude Code's power came from something that also made it deeply dangerous. Unlike a chatbot that suggests code and waits for you to copy it, Claude Code could execute directly. It lived in the terminal. It had file system access. It could run shell commands. That meant if it got something wrong, it didn't just give you the wrong answer, it acted on it. The first documented disasters started appearing in developer forums in late 2025. A developer in San Francisco posted to Reddit. He had asked Claude Code to clean up an old project directory. It interpreted the instruction broadly. It ran rm-rf, a command that permanently deletes files, including his entire production environment. Everything was gone. He was not alone. Researchers studying the failures identified a pattern they called the case insensitivity trap. On Mac and Windows systems, the file system doesn't distinguish between upper and lowercase folder names. Claude Code would sometimes confuse folders with similar names and delete the wrong one. The agent wasn't making logical errors. It was making environmental assumptions that its training hadn't prepared it for. It saw a folder name, it matched a name, it deleted it. The official position: these were edge cases, use the tool responsibly. Developers responded by writing their own defense systems, custom scripts they called security hooks that would intercept dangerous commands before Claude Code could execute them. The irony was sharp. Developers needed to build protection systems to guard against the tool they'd bought to save them time. But the data loss problem was just the start. In parallel, security researchers had begun stress testing the CLI's architecture. What they found beneath the surface was far more alarming than a few deleted databases.
March 31, 2026. Anthropic's engineering team made a routine deployment. Claude Code version 2.1.88 was pushed to NPM, the public package repository that developers use to install tools. Inside that release, buried in the package files, was something that should never have shipped: a source map file. 59.8 megabytes containing 512,000 lines of unobfuscated TypeScript. It was the internal source code of Claude Code itself. Within hours, researchers had downloaded it, mirrored it to GitHub, and begun reverse engineering the CLI's logic. Within 12 hours, the security community had already identified 3 critical command injection vulnerabilities buried in the codebase. The technical term is CWE78, unsanitized interpolation of external input into shell-evaluated execution paths. In plain language, the tool could be tricked through maliciously crafted inputs into running arbitrary commands on a developer's machine. But the criminal ecosystem moved faster than the researchers. Within 24 hours of the leak, malicious actors had built Trojanized versions of Claude Code, fake, unlocked editions they distributed on forums and Discord servers. Developers, curious about the leak, downloaded what they thought were enhanced versions of the tool. What they actually downloaded were 2 pieces of malware. The first was called VDAR, an info stealer designed to harvest browser credentials and cryptocurrency wallet keys. The second was Ghost Socks, a proxy malware that turned the infected machine into a node in a residential proxy network, essentially renting the developer's internet connection to bad actors without their knowledge. The exploitation model had a name in security circles: supply chain lure. Developers trust their tools. That trust becomes the attack vector. Anthropic patched the vulnerabilities within 48 hours. They published a security advisory. They acknowledged the source map error. But one issue remained, and it was arguably the most dangerous of all. When Claude Code runs in non-interactive mode, using a flag called -p, it skips the workspace trust dialog entirely. This dialog is the one moment where a developer can review what the agent is about to do before it does it. In CI/CD pipelines, automated systems that run without human oversight, this last checkpoint was designed to be a final checkpoint. Anthropic's response, when pressed by security researchers, skipping the dialogue in non-interactive mode, was intentional. It was designed for automation. Translation: in the environments where Claude Code is most likely to encounter attacker-controlled inputs, automated pipelines, pull requests from external contributors, the last safety gate had been deliberately removed. The security community's reaction was swift and scathing. Anthropic had built a powerful tool, deployed it in sensitive enterprise environments, and left the back door open on purpose. Meanwhile, outside Anthropic's walls, something else was growing. 3 months earlier, in November 2025, an Austrian engineer named Peter Steinberger had built something in his apartment. He built it in 1 hour. It started as a WhatsApp wrapper. He called it ClaudeBot. Peter Steinberger had retired years earlier after selling his software company. He wasn't trying to build a startup. He was trying to text his computer, literally send a WhatsApp message and have his machine complete a task. The first version was crude. It could summarize documents, check builds, answer questions. Useful, but unremarkable. The project's turning point came when Steinberger was in Marrakesh. He was on vacation, spotty Ethernet. He sent a voice message to the bot, something he hadn't programmed it to handle. Instead of failing, the agent figured it out autonomously. It identified the audio format, converted it using an open-source tool called FFmpeg, found an OpenAI key sitting on the local machine, sent the audio to a transcription endpoint, and replied with the transcribed text. Steinberger had never written a single line of voice support. The agent solved a problem it wasn't designed for. He posted about it online. Developers lost their minds. The project was renamed OpenClaw. By March 2026, it had 250,000 GitHub stars, one of the fastest-growing repositories in the history of the platform. The community built over 3,000 skills, modular add-ons that extended the agent's capabilities across 15 messaging platforms, including Signal, Telegram, and Discord.
Developers who distrusted Anthropic's closed ecosystem migrated. OpenClaw ran locally. Data never left the machine unless the user chose to send it. No corporate surveillance, no terms of service changes overnight, no surprise safety restrictions. But OpenClaw's openness created its own catastrophe. With no central vetting process, the skills registry, the library of community-built modules, became contaminated. Malicious actors uploaded skills designed to steal credential keys, harvest cryptocurrency wallets, and perform lateral movement across networks. The underground marketplace that emerged was called Moltroad, built inside a social network for AI agents called Moltbook, where over 1.6 million bots had registered by February 2026. Moltroad was a skills bazaar where agents bought and sold automated attack capabilities. Credential stealers, reconnaissance modules, lateral movement scripts. A novice actor could acquire a skill developed by a sophisticated threat group and execute it instantly through their personal AI agent without writing a single line of code. The democratization of agency had become the democratization of offensive capability.
By early 2026, Anthropic hit a $380 billion valuation, but its safest AI was leaking source code. OpenClaw democratized agents, but created a playground for hackers. The lesson isn't that this tech is bad, it's that power scales faster than safety. When that gap opens, it gets filled by criminals and unforeseen mistakes. 3 takeaways for the new era. The terminal is a battlefield. AI agents have turned developer workstations into high-value infrastructure. If an agent can touch your file system, you need a firewall, not just a prompt. Open isn't always safe. No central authority means no central responsibility. The most dangerous AI isn't owned by a corporation. It's the one controlled by no one. The threat is invisible. The most capable models, like the ones hitting 93% autonomous engineering, are hidden behind closed doors because they're deemed too risky. But market pressure eventually pushes every internal warning into the public eye. In 1965, Moore's law predicted power would double. No one predicted what happens when that power starts making its own decisions. The question for 2026 isn't whether agents will change the world. They already have. The real question is, who controls the change and who gets hurt when no one does?